Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Whitepod. My name is Harshad, and I'm the Director of Alliances at White Labs. We are a digital agency specializing in SaaS and e commerce business marketing. And my today's special guest is Mario, VP of Marketing at IX Systems, a leading open source technology. And so basically, the company behind TrueNAS, they provide cutting edge servers and trusted data infrastructure worldwide. A big welcome to you, Mario, and I'm so happy to have you with me.
Hey, likewise, Harshit. It'll be fun talking about marketing, which is usually the least appreciated discipline within a company. Don't you agree? Everybody can be a marketer because we're all consumers, but it'll be fun talking a little bit about both the art and the science with you. I appreciate the invitation, Harshit.
Brilliant, brilliant, Mario. But I would love to start with your journey, which is quite fascinating, to be honest. Selling newspaper, working in a garage, and then entering into IT. Please tell us about that first.
All right. I grew up in California. I currently live in Texas, but I grew up in California in Silicon Valley. So I had somewhat of an unfair advantage of cracking a Silicon Valley job. But I grew up in a laborer family.
Uh-huh.
And like a lot of kids, these days they don't trust children to do these jobs. But I delivered newspapers. I worked in a restaurant washing dishes. I did a lot of things there to earn money for do all my music endeavors when I was a kid. But I realized I wasn't going to be a musician, so I joined the Marine Corps and did with a high enough score that I was able to guarantee myself to go into electronics and IT.
Okay.
And I'm so grateful for that because it really gave me not just the military experience, for which I am very grateful. It
Yep.
also gave me experiential learning that was really incredible, such that when I got out of the Marine Corps and went back to college on the GI Bill, it was super easy to get straight A's because I was already an IT guy, right? 6 years of doing the job made it easy to go get the degree afterwards. And I've been blessed. I've had a chance to do a lot of technical things, but I found I probably was better at talking than typing. And
Uh-huh.
over that time, switched from being an IT person and a QA engineer to working as a technical marketing person, first a systems engineer, technical marketing, product marketing, and now for the past decade or so, doing marketing leadership roles. And I'm one of those kind of working man's PhDs or blue collar marketing executives that didn't start as a marketer, but finished as a marketer with domain expertise in their area. In our case, it's boring. We're a corner of the IT that, albeit ultra important, where data is stored, lives, and protected, and does all of the great things that we do with the internet today. That technology is so far down in the infrastructure. When you store something on Amazon, do you know where it is? Of course not, or what it's stored on and such. So our audience, if you think about it, has a consumer angle, but our business model aims at a B2B IT audiences where we monetize our passions. Is that good enough for a background?
Yep. How exactly IX happened to you? Like, I'm sure because you're working for your own thing, right? There was something going on,
Yeah.
and then you switched to IX.
It's funny. They say the gene pool in Silicon Valley is rather shallow. I grew up in California and worked there for many years, and the IX Systems corporate office was on my commute home from two different
Oh.
jobs that I had working in San Jose. So I was always familiar with the company,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't. And the company started in the year 2002. It's now 20 years old and profitable, but not a household name. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's fun working on the, let's just say, the VC funded or the PE or public company way of doing things. This company's private and profitable, no investors, and is playing what I like to call the get rich slow scheme, which we'll get into a little bit more, which is this is about building using what is free technology or collaboration amongst a community to
Yep.
drive this business model, because our goal is to give first, and through reciprocation, if
Mhm.
we have a higher purpose and we think people before profit, it's just a fun way to work. And I think that's how I really found the company. I applied because of my background in similar companies, but the jobs become very rewarding because it's a very different kind of culture.
Yep.
And it gives us a chance to do marketing a little differently. And hopefully I can share some of those ideas with your audience.
Brilliant. Let's talk about IX Systems and its main core offerings altogether, please.
Sure. X Systems is the company behind TrueNAS.
Mm.
TrueNAS is an open source software for data storage. And your IT people would use that
Yep.
from a business perspective. but we're more well known as the company behind TrueNAS, which is the world's most deployed operating system for storage. It's free to use, not just free to download, but free to use it all. And so our business model is for folks to try it, not unlike a SaaS, try it, like it, and we encourage them to continue doing the types of engagements that would allow us to perceive buying signals. And
Mhm.
our hope is that they just ask for a quote. And whereas for my sales team, most of the demand that I send to them is in the form of people who've already raised their hand to ask for a quote.
Yeah.
And it's one of the ways we can really drive a lot lower cost in sales and marketing versus the more traditional methods. So our core offering, think about it as a software that IT people use, but it's most used by people of all skill levels at
Mhm.
home to build a network attached storage or a NAS or a protected storage inside your home. It could be used all the way from the home to the largest computing environments on the planet.
Brilliant. And since you mentioned open source storage altogether, would love to know about its pros and cons, please.
Sure. I'm somewhat biased since I work for an open source
I know.
company. I worked for another open source company before as well. And the fundamental difference for those who don't know is that you either have software that's free to use and then there's certain licensing, or there's software that can only be used under a paid for license. So open source just means that it's free to use, but moreover, that all of the code is put in the public for anybody to see.
Mhm.
That's one of the pros of open source, is that it allows a level of transparency to the person using the technology that's just not it's not available in other technologies. So you can't look under the covers to see how it's working. And as the technology matures, the area of the data center where I work in storage is among the last of those areas where open source has taken over. So people may remember that there were only Windows computers in the world, and Macs and Amigas and all that sort of stuff. And this idea of a free operating system, Linux, came up. What's the number one operating system in business technology today? Linux.
Right.
You look at databases, where it used to be Oracle and SAP and all that. Now the most common are unstructured NoSQL databases and in the cloud as cloud services, right? So you'll see that things change. And I would say that open source is one of those technologies that, from a marketing perspective,
Mhm.
allows us to focus on the value of the technology and not having to buy it. As a marketer, it really means I'm just trying to get you to try, not buy, which is fun. And if the goal is to get engagement, and engagement not necessarily with any specific rules, just engagement that leads to more engagement, you have a lot more flexibility in how you can do some marketing campaigns. But here's the other trick: if you work at a company like this,
Mhm.
odds are you make a lot less money as a company from a margin perspective and such. So you can't buy the same marketing stuff that everybody else buys. So a lot of it is you have to do sweat equity, homegrown things, because most of the offerings in the marketplace are priced for folks who are public companies or VC backed or PE backed from a technology perspective.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. Let's talk a bit more because, just like you mentioned, your commitment to open source. Let's dwell a bit more into the strategy part of it. Would love to know, how does this commitment to open source influence your marketing and your product development strategies?
Okay, so I'll take it in product development and marketing. I'll split them apart, and that'll be easy.
Sure, please.
All right. From a product development standpoint, it's a well-known model. Instead of hiring engineers, paying them to test everything and release it on day one as being bulletproof and ready to go as a solution, open source is very different, because even before the first functional prototype is done,
Mhm.
folks in the community are encouraged to use it. And it's that use over approximately the same development cycle. Most software companies work in 6-month development cycles. You could think of the development happening over that time. The difference is, instead of it being done by a small number of the employees that work for you, it's done
Mhm.
by a larger number of community members. And it gives not just more of a diversity of the types of people who are doing the quality assurance, but it means that the number of use cases tested is most diverse.
Sure.
So that, from a product development perspective, we could not exist as a business if it were not for the value that's given back to the community in the form of quality assurance testing and documentation and all that sort of stuff. So that's one of the things. What it means though is you as a company have to be okay with the idea that your beta is
Yep.
indeed a beta. There's no such thing as a beta in these other technologies, because when you if you're going to buy it, it has to work out of the gate. Our technology, we're not trying to help you buy it. We just want you to use it. And with that's, I think, what changes the development. Now, how that translates to marketing, I've alluded to it a little bit so far. This, for us, we have a model where we aim to get as much engagement possible, obviously digitally, but our key metric is whether or not they're engaging in our enterprise content or they're engaging and giving the signals that they would get benefit from using the technology. And once we see that and we see people using stuff, we can see exabytes of storage, a huge number that I don't need to explain. Imagine it's just data is getting so big, right? We can see those things. And so from a marketing perspective, our goal is to stay top of mind, not necessarily to get them to buy stuff, just to keep them engaged. And I think that, to me, allows for almost like a more consumer type of emotional buying
Yep.
there, right? Where, and I've said this to other folks, friends who work in SaaS companies that are for profit. There's free stuff. You not only can you test the software, but there's the methods and the knowledge and the business process stuff that goes with that. And oftentimes we don't feel that's of value. But if you can say, hey, that's valuable stuff, you're just like marketing. We're just evangelizing the positive traits of the technology to get you to consider it next time you've got a project at top of mind. We, in our space in IT, given the average selling prices, there's almost always a short list of technologies that are then compared against each other, often even tested against each other and benchmarked and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And really, from our marketing perspective, we don't sell the same way those other guys do with direct sales and SEs at the customer site. We're a fraction of the size of the other folks, but we wind up in the short list of these opportunities because the folks who are involved in looking for solutions know our name and have tried it, and they just bring the idea up. And the cool thing is, even though you might be a challenger brand, you can beat the bigger brands if you get a fair comparison. And so for me, a lot of the marketing here is just to convince people that thing for free. And that's the weird thing in this business. In IT, obviously, 1 second of downtime is bad and 5 minutes of downtime is a failure. It's harder for folks to look at things that might be considered more garden variety and open, because that's not the premium good stuff. But if you think about how technology matures, and this is certainly where we are in this market space, among the last ones to have open source really affect the way people make decisions, I just think for most anything, if you follow that Gartner hype cycle, at least in our industry, a lot of our customers do that. And if for folks who know that, you got the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment. But once a technology gets on that plateau of productivity, and it's been there for 10 years, and one might argue the storage industry's been there for 10 years, it only makes sense that new solutions that are fundamentally lower cost and have become mature over time just become an alternative choice. So I'd say, at least in my case, while it sounds like a bad analogy, from a business perspective, and even times from a challenger brand perspective, you're somewhat the generic version, if for no other reason that you don't have the brand name. But if you have a generic version that, like generic pharmaceuticals, literally match the thing, most people will go for the generic form of a drug because at that point they see them as equal. And I think that's one of this ideas. How is your stuff as a challenger brand seen as equal to the incumbent brands? And how do you get on that short list? And for me, it's just driving as many reasons for the audience to engage and do something that shows value back to them.
Sure, sure. And since you mentioned like community marketing is something which really works for the company and in your niche altogether, what are the other channels that you leverage, Mario, for your lead gen?
This is great. I have in the past used this strategy that wasn't exclusively open source. As you probably know, influencers are better at putting out content than most companies. And I have in the past used a similar technique. You give your product to an influencer and they are seen using it, or they mention that they use it somewhere, and then more people go check it out. And
Mhm.
in this case, you can imagine a technology like storage being important, not just for companies, but think about anybody for whom data is important. A wedding photographer.
Yeah.
Imagine losing data. That would be terrible. All forms of content creators, people who are hoarding content at their house and stuff, so they have it right in case the
Sure.
internet goes down and they still have their 10,000 hours of entertainment. There's a lot of need out there that people have, and from a community perspective, the hope would be that an environment could exist where that exchange happens. Now, from a marketing perspective, we find that environment is often in the comments of the videos of influencers who post content. And we're lucky in the sense that our segment has a couple of channels with very large viewerships. And these
Mhm.
influencers have taken a liking to our company, TrueNAS, and they have essentially created videos. My video creation department comes largely from 3 influencers. We don't have to create videos because all I got to do is just put it out and they create the video. And that's cool. It's like the symbiotic thing. Our
Yep.
content is such that it drives viewers back to them, which they take content that we put on our forums and market, which drives it back to them. So I like to call that the virtuous circle. That's one of those elements that's a little bit different when it comes to
Mhm.
community, because those influencers can reach people you'd never reach. And as long as you can as long as your story is one that their audience likes, you can get that going. So I'd say that's one channel that is always good to try to break into.
Mhm.
Another one that I might say is around simple word of mouth, because
Yeah.
we
And then
we
you
can
have
do lots
quite a
of
bit of
case
material.
studies, we can do all those sort of things, but for me, and that's I'd actually hard sheet. How do people manage word of mouth? Because that's one of the original marketing strategies of all time, and in today's society, it's hard to do that. But at least I've found from an open source perspective that word of mouth is a bigger part of it than I've experienced in other parts of my career.
Gotcha, gotcha. So anything around like the much more on the digital marketing front, SEO, paid ads, all of those things. Do you still leverage them, or is it something which didn't really do well for you in the past? So a big no for them.
Yeah, we consider SEO to be a hygiene thing. It is certainly doable if you have the will and discipline to do it. And so we haven't needed to focus on it that much because, as I mentioned, most of the searches that people would search for our keyword terms would come back to our forums or to some place where the content points to us anyway. Everybody points back to us because, yeah, why not give the people a backlink for the story that you're writing?
Mhm.
So we find that SEO is a little bit less important because if they don't find us on our site, odds are they're going to find something that points to our site anyway.
Sure.
Ads are a hard thing for us because I can't calculate cost per lead and cost per click in the
Yep.
sense that we have a fundamentally different philosophy on how dollars turn into revenue.
Yep.
In that case, just a lot of the things on the market we can't necessarily buy. We do a fair amount of social, but I
Mhm.
found that our audience tends to be a little bit more old school, let's just say, in the sense that we do have people on social, and a lot of socials around our community and doing the free stuff. But from a revenue perspective, we find that good old fashioned email newsletters still carry the day when it
Mhm.
comes to marketing.
I'm sure because you're pushing so much content out in the community. Um, Google anyways loves you.
They may not love us per se. But we've had some scuffles, let's just say, with some of our resellers who
Yeah.
have gone out and done some stuff there. One of the things I'll mention about our business too, we do sell things directly, but we're also just the way our model works. A lot of organizations buy IT solutions through a third
Yep.
party value added reseller.
Mhm.
We certainly do have that. And before I forget, add to that value added reseller thing. One of our challenges is that we are a more economical solution, which usually means lower ASP head to head. But what we've found now is, especially and you talk about SaaS, talk about just organizations turning into doing services. They want to make their money on services. So they can still charge the same amount for the project, just their cost to buy the material to deliver the project in the form of our technology, just less expensive. So we're finding that our our strategy, like you might expect for any challenger brand, is to grow bottom up. And
Mm.
the company's been able to double over the past 4 years, which is a good thing, definitely grow faster than the market. And I think we're in a good position to drive continued growth. I just think that it can't carry the same expectations that most commercial companies have because it just takes longer. And the cool thing is the business model is optimized not to have to do it today. Not that I'll ever do one of those jobs again where you have to answer to those. We still do our quarterly metrics and we still track everything. But as a business, we're not as stressed because we know this is a super long game. And that's what makes it fun. Now, can you do those same techniques in a company where this is the most important quarter in the company's history, or every quarter is? Maybe a little harder to do, but I'm hoping that I shared some ideas that might give some folks just some thoughts about how to
Yep.
drive more engagement. Because I think the challenge is we're all trying to drive engagement, which means we're in a world where we're just begging for everybody's time and eyeballs and all of that. And so it's almost like it has to be not just valuable, just super easy. We've just
No.
found that attention spans have also gone really short. And that's one of the things where I know that you put out chunks of videos like this in order to do that. It's just really, you have to do the commercial for every piece of content almost as a means of driving them to and measuring those engagements and lead scoring.
That's true. It differs a lot, to be honest, from industry to industry, niche to niche. Yeah, just like yours. It's quite fascinating for all the things that you do. And since you mentioned collaboration and partnership, I would love to know a bit more on that sense, because that's something which I feel is extremely essential in the tech world for the company to grow. Can you please discuss some sort of strategic alliance or
Sure.
collaboration that have been like instrumental for IX altogether, please?
So I won't give a specific name, but I'll just say in general.
Sure.
One of the things that we at IX can do with our TrueNAS community is that it is the same thing value that it applies to the influencers.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, you're a challenger brand asking a bigger brand to associate with you so you can have a higher confidence solution presentation to the marketplace.
Yeah.
And for most commercial companies, that they can't have every challenger brand and do that with, right? They tend to pick the larger ones as far as that goes. And so what we have as an advantage is that with a large community of 250,000 people active, it allows us to be able to offer even more value to the partner up front than we actually receive. Because the
Mhm.
first thing that happens is 250,000 people see their value prop. And I can show that I can reach more, even though we might be 1/10 their size, we might reach
Mhm.
10 times more people than they do. So that's where I think there's that exchange of value that we have to do because we don't have the money to otherwise exchange hands. And so if you're, another thing about being open is great because we don't have to have any affinity over any partners. The
Mhm.
idea is anybody can become a partner, write the code, deploy it, put it in the app catalog, you're a partner. No one's stopping you. And I think what's cool about that is it drives this organic thing where a bunch of people in the community try a bunch of stuff. Those companies see, hey, those guys are doing this sort of thing. Maybe we should do something there. So I think it's, if you as a company don't have that value built in, part of the way to attract partners is to sell, if not that immediate value, what value to the investment they're going to make now that'll give a total return. Because most of the time partnerships are just a superficial type of announcement that is, it feels good, but it doesn't necessarily result in a lot of joint business. I'd say most press releases of partnerships, 1 out of 10 actually become one of those killer solutions, and the other 9 just join the portfolio.
That's true. So, all right, let's talk about what are the key challenges and opportunities current landscape of data storage and server
Okay.
solutions.
All right. Well, at the end of the day, this is infrastructure. And what used to be specialized devices to do things like networking, storage, and servers are all essentially commodity off the shelf hardware with components from the open marketplace assembled, and the differentiation is in the software.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things. So if that's the case, there is this view of the world much like the way you view cloud storage. You don't care what it runs on, you just want it to deliver the service level agreements. You in organizations whose data doesn't work ideally in the cloud, and there's some of these cases where there's a lot of SaaS companies who've done this. Basecamp moved from in the cloud to on premises because they were able to chop 70% off their costs. So this idea that the cloud's going to be where it wins isn't necessarily correct for all data. I think we tend to, in technology, to see that it being very binary. There's winners and losers, when oftentimes the market grows more than double and the losing technology still grows. It just doesn't grow as fast, right? So in this case, the value is shifting from what would be just appliance type things to a more software-based approach that works independent of the hardware you put it on, because a networking switch and a server and a storage device are literally all the same. It just depends on how much they're optimized. Like a truck, a F1, and a passenger car are all vehicles. They're all optimized for one thing, but essentially it's the same technology if you think about it that way.
Sure.
So the challenge is, will industry participants, the brands that we're chasing, will they be able to adapt, given their business models rely on 70+% margins to even make money? Will they, in a continue further declining commoditized market, continue to be able to get those margins? And we feel we're really well positioned to be there when the marketplace decides that this open source software defined thing works just as good, if not better, than the other one, and they realize it's safe now to move forward to a new technology.
That's brilliant. Why don't you please tell us, basically share some notable success story or use case where you feel like IX have made a significant impact on a business or maybe public library organization, any?
This is an easy question for me to answer, Harshit. So by virtue of us being open source and the way our business model works and the way we operate our business, we are recognized as a digital public good. And there's an organization, the Digital Public Good Alliance. It's a UN-backed organization with the goal of bringing business process and technology to the developing world. The developing world can't buy it the way the richest companies in the richest countries can. While we might be a $100 million commercial company, our software and technology delivers billions in real value that never would have been created had a free version not been available to go do it. And in that regard, the idea that those in the developing world can still have the same quality of stuff. They may not be able to have the same brand of whatever it is that helps that go, but they can have something that does the same thing. And I can say that our technology today is widely used in universities, and particularly in areas where they're doing scientific research and other very demanding things, cancer research, geospatial intelligence research, all of those things, everything to do with AI is being done. And we enable those organizations to do it where otherwise they just wouldn't do the project because there was no money to buy the storage to do it. So we really feel good as a company of being a digital public good. I'm just hoping that as we as thinking about ESG as a company, environmentally, our technology prevents rare earth minerals and hazardous waste from being put into the ground earlier than it needs to be. Where you would use something for 5 years and destroy it, you can now use it indefinitely until it no longer makes sense. Not because it's the green thing to do, but because why do you throw something away that's still perfectly good and works and can store data for you? That's all these other projects. We're already enabling a bunch of innovation that otherwise wouldn't. And our message to the marketplace is that by not doing away with other technologies, but considering adding open source to their mix, they can do a lot of things, whether it's extend the valuable life of their technology, or moreover, have all of their data on a single platform. As you might know, it's hard to move data from one place to another. It's like water. Try moving a reservoir of water from one place to another. Real hard. Electricity, it's instant.
Let's do this thing. Let's have a quick rapid fire. I think that will cheer you up. Okay.
All right, let's go.
All right. What's your last Google search?
My last Google search had to do with some concert tickets in my local area that I'm got to buy my wife the tickets.
All right. What is not a big deal to most people, but is torture to you?
That's a good question.
It's a rapid
What
fire. Quick.
tortures me as a person is seeing something out of place. And I'll give you an example. Far too many times in movies, they will show military uniforms and the decorations will be inaccurately displayed. I've always wondered, why didn't they ask somebody? Like, why didn't they literally just put it out on the internet? Hey, is this picture right? Anybody who served could tell them. But interestingly enough, it's just those details are always missed. So that's one of my little pet peeves.
All right. What word record do you think you have a shot at beating?
It could be for talking the longest without taking a break, though I imagine that's a pretty hard one to break. I'm likely an average human being that isn't probable to break any world records.
Oh, God. I'm sure you'll find something. Are you more cautious or bold?
I'd say I'm more bold. I think marketers need to be that way because else you're just not going to push the envelope. So I think that's good selection bias by me in terms of a career.
Huh? Now, coming to my last question. Do you watch shows one episode at a time or binge the whole season?
It depends on when you ask me that question. In the past, naturally, it was door number A. My wife and I were definitely door number B now.
All right. Thank you so much, Mario. Thank you for all the time, wisdom, and knowledge. I'm sure our viewers gonna love it. Thank you so much.
All right. I appreciate the time, Harshit.
All right.